Tonight, Earth's oxygen level doubles. Not slowly over centuries, just sharp enough to make every familiar breath feel wrong. Every spark burns hotter. Every flame reaches higher than it should. When the very air around you becomes twice as rich, ordinary becomes dangerous. What happens when breathing itself becomes a risk? Before we explore this together, drop a comment about where you're listening from. I genuinely read them all, and they help shape future journeys. If you enjoy these late-night scenarios, subscribe, but only if these explorations truly capture your imagination. This is the story of Oxygen Day, and the first dangerous breath is about to begin. A cigarette lighter clicks in a quiet kitchen. The flame that emerges defies every expectation. The woman holding it jerks her hand back. The blue tongue stretches higher than normal. It burns hotter than it should. Her thumb feels the heat from farther away. Around the world, millions of similar flames act like wild creatures. She tries again. The flame leaps upward with startling hunger. Her coffee cup sits forgotten as she stares. A smoker lights his morning cigarette on a doorstep. The flame races up the tobacco faster than his reflexes expect. The ember glows with unusual intensity. He drops it after a couple puffs. The cigarette turns to ash before it hits the ground. Kitchen stovetops produce flames that reach toward ceiling fans. Gas ranges designed for normal conditions struggle to contain the surge. Pilot lights flicker with restless energy. A match head ignites with a sharp crack. The wooden stem catches fire immediately. It burns brighter. A woman shakes her hand to kill the flame, but it clings longer than usual. A dropped cigarette butt sets newspaper ablaze before anyone notices. Dry leaves catch fire from brief contact with any flame source. Every spark carries potential for disaster. A runner steps outside for her morning jog. A few breaths in, her head begins to spin. She grabs a lamp post to steady herself. Each inhale feels too rich, like drinking cream when expecting water. Her heart races even before her legs warm up. She sits on the curb. She takes shallow breaths. The dizziness doesn't fade. Her hands shake slightly. An office worker reaches for his coffee mug. His hand trembles. He hasn't had any caffeine yet. The air floods his bloodstream faster than his body expects. His nerves buzz with a charge that won't settle. Children playing in a school playground turn sluggish after running games. Their faces go blank in the middle of laughter. A teacher notices students drifting and confused. Simple activities like climbing stairs bring a strange, heavy lightheadedness. Hyperventilation starts before anyone understands why. A woman climbing to her apartment feels her throat tighten. Her chest burns slightly with each inhalation. She pauses on each landing to rest. Breathing becomes a careful balance between necessity and excess. A man ties his running shoes on a park bench. He stands up to stretch his calves. His heart immediately pounds like a drum. Oxygen-rich blood surges through his system. His pulse jumps from a simple movement. Each beat feels stronger, more urgent. He sits back down, he waits. The racing continues. Sweat beads on his forehead. A woman walks up the stairs to her apartment. Halfway up, she grabs the handrail. Her chest feels tight. Her heart hammers against her ribs. What should be easy exercise becomes overwhelming exertion. Gym equipment across the world sits empty as people learn the new limit. A weightlifter attempts his usual routine. A few reps in, his heart rate spikes beyond safe levels. He sets the weights down with shaking hands. Office workers find that walking to meetings leaves them breathless. Simple tasks like carrying grocery bags produce rapid heartbeats. An elderly man pushing a shopping cart feels his pulse throb in his temples. Blood vessels open wider under the load. Faces flush red. People check their blood pressure again, unsettled by the mismatch. Hearts learn to beat differently in a world where every breath delivers too much fuel. A gas station attendant checks fuel levels in underground tanks. A small static spark jumps from his clipboard. The vapor cloud ignites immediately. Alcohol-based hand sanitizer bottles in hospital corridors catch fire from overhead lights. Cleaning chemicals stored in utility closets begin smoking without warning. Paint thinner in garages reaches a burn point that shouldn't exist. The attendant runs toward the emergency shutoff. Flame follows the vapor trail. His shoes slip on spilled gasoline. Households discover that common products have turned hostile. Nail polish remover bottles warm on bathroom counters. Perfume atomizers create tiny fireballs when sprayed. Rubbing alcohol evaporates so fast it leaves a flammable cloud behind it. Industrial facilities around the world trigger emergency lockdowns. Chemical plants struggle with runaway reactions. Safety margins built into decades of protocols suddenly feel thin. A pharmacy technician notices medicine bottles feeling warm to the touch. Tinctures and liquid medications begin to bubble. She moves them into refrigerated storage. Fuel storage facilities become ticking time bombs. Aviation fuel sits in tanks and starts to feel unstable. Airport ground crews clear out refueling areas. Even hairspray becomes a potential flamethrower in oxygen-rich air. A paramedic wheels a patient through hospital doors. The man on the stretcher gasps for air. His oxygen saturation reads normal, but he can't breathe. Emergency rooms fill with symptoms that match no textbook. People arrive with racing hearts after minimal activity. Others report dizziness from simply standing up. Nurses check and recheck equipment that keeps insisting everything is fine. The paramedic describes the scene to a doctor. Neither understands what they're seeing. More ambulances line up outside. A surgeon begins an appendectomy and watches the numbers climb too high. Anesthesia lands wrong in the new air. Ventilators push more than the body can handle. Waiting rooms overflow with people shaken by changes they can't name. A woman clutches her chest, convinced it's a heart attack. Tests come back clean. Her body simply won't settle. Pediatric wards fill with children who can't catch their breath. Their smaller bodies react harder. Parents pace the halls, demanding answers doctors can't give. Medical staff rotate more often as they feel the same strain on shift. Nurses grow lightheaded during long hours. Doctors fight hand tremors during delicate work. Hospitals that should provide answers become places where questions pile up. A woman grips her gardening shears in her backyard. The hedge she trimmed yesterday now towers above her head. The blades feel useless in her trembling hands. Grass pushes through sidewalk cracks that appeared overnight. Roses climb her fence with unnatural speed. Ivy wraps around her mailbox in thick spirals. The oxygen-rich air feeds every green thing with relentless energy. She steps back toward her house. Thorns catch her sleeve. The rose bush wasn't there this morning. Tree roots buckle concrete driveways across suburban neighborhoods. Oak branches stretch toward power lines with alarming reach. Maple trees that once provided gentle shade now cast shadows that shift visibly throughout the day. A man watches his vegetable garden from his kitchen window. Tomato plants shoot up while he drinks his coffee. Beanstalks twist around wooden stakes and keep climbing. His carefully planned rows dissolve into green chaos. Fruit trees produce blossoms and fruit simultaneously. Apple branches bend under loads they weren't designed to carry. Peach trees split from rapid growth spurts that happen faster than their wood can strengthen. Homeowners discover their lawns need cutting constantly. Mower blades dull fast. Grass grows faster than machines can trim it. Gardens become battlegrounds between human planning and plant ambition. A sharp whine fills the kitchen as something large strikes the window. The woman cooking breakfast drops her spatula. The mosquito on the glass is the size of her thumb. Flies that once went unnoticed now buzz with deeper voices. Their wings work harder to lift bodies grown heavy with oxygen abundance. They land on surfaces with audible thumps instead of gentle settlings. She swats at the mosquito with a dish towel. It dodges her swing easily. Its movement feels deliberate, calculated. Ants in sidewalk cracks appear noticeably larger than their previous generations. Their mandibles click audibly when they meet obstacles. Anthill entrances widen to accommodate insects that no longer fit their inherited architecture. A teenager notices moths gathering around his porch light. Each one spans wider than his palm. Their wing beats create small breezes that flutter nearby leaves. The light fixture rattles under their collective impact. Spiders abandon webs that can no longer support their increased weight. They scuttle across floors with footsteps people can hear from adjacent rooms. House cats watch them with new wariness. Bees returning to hives find doorways too narrow for their expanded frames. They cluster outside, unable to enter their own homes. The humming of confused colonies grows louder each day. Size becomes the new limitation in a world where oxygen removes old boundaries. Inside a suburban beehive, workers race through hexagonal corridors. Their movements blur with manic energy. The queen struggles to keep pace with her own workers. Bees that once made measured flights between flowers now dart frantically from bloom to bloom. Their foraging patterns become erratic. They visit the same roses repeatedly within minutes, unable to remember their previous stops. The beekeeper opens the hive wearing extra protection. Angry buzzing fills the entire yard. His gloves feel inadequate against their intensity. Ant colonies excavate tunnels at unprecedented rates. Hills grow overnight into small mountains. The insects work without rest. Their metabolism supercharged by atmospheric abundance. Their trails become highways of constant motion. A picnic table becomes a war zone when scout ants discover dropped crumbs. A swarm arrives within minutes. They carry food particles too large for their tunnels, creating traffic jams at colony entrances. Wasp nests expand daily as their inhabitants build with compulsive energy. Paper walls grow thicker. Entrance holes multiply. A homeowner watches nervously as yellow jackets transform a small nest into something that crowds the eaves. Termite damage accelerates beyond normal patterns. Wood structures that should take months to weaken crumble in days. Their tunnels riddle support beams with frightening efficiency. Insect societies discover that abundance and speed don't guarantee success. A golden retriever pants heavily on the kitchen floor. His owner kneels beside him, checking his pulse. The dog's heart races even while resting. Veterinary clinics overflow with pets experiencing symptoms their doctors can't explain. Cats hide under furniture, overwhelmed by sensory input from oxygen-enhanced nervous systems. Dogs refuse walks that once brought them joy. She carries him to the car for an emergency visit. His tongue hangs longer than usual. Each breath sounds labored. Small mammals suffer most severely. Hamsters in pet stores run compulsively on wheels until they collapse from exhaustion. Guinea pigs develop irregular heartbeats. Rabbit breathing becomes rapid and shallow. Birds in backyard feeders exhibit frantic behavior. Cardinals and sparrows dart between branches without apparent purpose. Their songs become shrill and repetitive. Seed consumption increases dramatically as their metabolisms demand more fuel. A cat owner notices her pet refusing to leave its hiding spot under the bed. When coaxed out, the animal's pupils remain dilated. Its whiskers twitch constantly. Even gentle petting triggers startled responses. Indoor fish tanks require constant attention as aquatic pets struggle with changed water chemistry. Dissolved oxygen levels exceed what their gills can process efficiently. Fish float near surfaces, gasping. Beloved companions become patients in a world they weren't designed to inhabit. A scientist checks her atmospheric monitor late at night. The readings climb higher than they did at midday. Her equipment shows what shouldn't be possible. Plants continue producing oxygen throughout the night. Leaves that should rest during darkness maintain photosynthetic activity. The thicker air feeds processes that normally shut down after sunset. She steps outside her research station. Even in darkness, she can hear vegetation growing. Rustling sounds emerge from every garden and park. Greenhouse owners discover their facilities become oxygen chambers overnight. Tropical plants designed for controlled environments now outgrow their containers daily. Humidity levels spike beyond sustainable ranges. Forest rangers report tree growth rates that exceed measurement capabilities. Saplings become mature trees before documentation can track their progress. Canopy coverage increases visibly as days pass. Urban parks transform into dense thickets. Walking paths disappear under expanding vegetation. Playgrounds become inaccessible as grass and shrubs reclaim open spaces designed for recreation. A meteorologist notices atmospheric readings that violate established patterns. Oxygen concentrations continue rising instead of stabilizing. The planet's green surfaces operate like factories that never shut down. Night and day merge into continuous biological production in a world where plants refuse to rest. A woman reaches for her house key at the front door. 8 hairy legs block her path. The spider fills the entire doorframe. Its body spans the width of a dinner plate. Eyes reflect porch light like black marbles. A web stretched across her entrance shimmers with morning dew and trembles under the creature's weight. She drops her purse on the walkway. She takes 3 steps backward. The spider's chelicera click audibly. Basements across residential neighborhoods become hunting grounds for arachnids that no longer fit traditional hiding spots. Their webs span room corners with cables thick as guitar strings. Prey remains include mice, small birds, and household pets that wandered too close. A father discovers his garage filled with webbing that reaches from floor to ceiling. The silk strands feel sturdy enough to support his weight. Multiple spiders move through the structure like commuters on elevated highways. Children refuse to play in backyards where garden spiders now rival the size of family cats. Swings and slides become anchor points for webs that catch more than insects. Parents peer nervously through windows before allowing outdoor activities. A plumber crawls under a house to fix leaking pipes. His flashlight illuminates legs that shouldn't exist in confined spaces. The scratching sound of chitin against wood beams echoes through the crawl space. Homes become territories disputed between human occupants and arachnid invaders. A metallic scraping echoes from the kitchen drain. The homeowner peers down the garbage disposal. Antennae as thick as pencils wave back at him. Cockroaches squeeze through pipes built for creatures far smaller. Their exoskeletons scrape against metal surfaces with sounds like fingernails on chalkboard. Drains overflow with insects that can no longer navigate municipal plumbing. He slams the disposal switch. The motor jams immediately. Clicking sounds multiply beneath the sink. Storm sewers become highways for waves of roaches migrating toward food sources. Their numbers create audible rustling in underground tunnels. Manhole covers vibrate from movement below. Street surfaces echo with hollow scratching sounds. A restaurant owner arrives to find his establishment occupied by scavengers that entered through floor drains. They consume food scraps with mandibles strong enough to chew through cardboard packaging. Grease traps become feeding stations for insects that no longer fear human presence. Urban exterminators abandon traditional methods. Spray bottles prove inadequate against creatures that shrug off treatments meant for smaller targets. Poison baits disappear overnight without noticeable population reduction. A woman discovers her apartment building's trash chute blocked by insects too large to pass through the opening. Garbage bags pile up as residents face the choice between manual disposal and confronting room-sized roaches. City infrastructure becomes inadequate for inhabitants it was never designed to accommodate. A wheat field stretches golden under afternoon sun. A farmer spots movement at the far edge. Grasshoppers the size of house cats emerge from the tree line. Their hind legs propel bodies through the air in bounds that cover yards instead of inches. Wing beats generate miniature windstorms that flatten young plants. Landing impacts create visible divots in soil that trucks would struggle to make. He runs toward his tractor. The engine turns over slowly. Mandibles click like industrial scissors behind him. Crop rows disappear under swarms that consume vegetation faster than combines can harvest. Corn stalks topple as insects climb toward tassels with weight that bends supports beyond breaking points. Irrigation equipment becomes perching sites for creatures whose mass triggers sprinkler systems. A helicopter pilot surveys farmland from above. The devastation spreads in visible waves across the landscape. Green fields transform into brown stubble as grasshopper swarms roll forward like slow-motion avalanches. Agricultural machinery designed for pest control becomes useless against insects that treat steel implements as minor obstacles. Cultivator blades bend under impacts from creatures that refuse to flee from approaching equipment. A farm family watches their livelihood disappear in hours instead of seasons. The locusts strip bark from fruit trees and consume fence posts when vegetation runs out. Their feeding sounds drown out attempts at normal conversation. Harvest seasons end before they begin on farms where size and appetite determine survival. A woman's bedroom window stands open to catch evening breeze. Her reading lamp attracts something that shouldn't exist. Wings span wider than her open book. The mosquito's proboscis extends like a medical needle designed for large animals. Its flight generates audible turbulence as it circles the room searching for exposed skin. Body segments pulse with visible blood from previous meals. She pulls blankets over her head. The buzzing grows closer. Sharp pressure pierces through fabric. Blood banks report mysterious shortages as nocturnal insects drain donations faster than volunteers can replenish supplies. Hospital windows require screening designed for birds rather than traditional insects. Patients recover from procedures only to face blood loss from unexpected sources. A camping family discovers their tent provides insufficient protection against proboscis equipment that penetrates nylon with ease. Sleeping bags become inadequate barriers. The insect's feeding leaves wounds that require medical attention rather than simple bandages. Urban health departments track disease outbreaks that spread with unprecedented speed. Vector-borne illnesses jump between hosts via insects whose increased capacity multiplies transmission rates. quarantine procedures prove ineffective against carriers that ignore traditional containment methods. A park ranger notices hikers abandoning trails during peak mosquito hours. The insect's hunting range expands as their flight capabilities improve. Wetland areas become no-go zones for human recreation. Public health measures become meaningless when disease vectors carry payloads measured in liters rather than drops. A beekeeper approaches his hives wearing standard protective gear. The familiar humming carries a deeper, more threatening tone. His veil suddenly feels inadequate. Guard bees intercept him from much farther away than before. Their stingers extend like hypodermic needles designed for veterinary use. Venom sacs contain doses that would challenge hospital emergency protocols. He retreats to his truck. Angry buzzing follows him. His protective suit shows puncture marks. Flower gardens become hazardous zones as bees defending territory inject enough toxin to incapacitate rather than merely deter threats. Their territorial range expands beyond traditional hive boundaries. Picnics in parks require medical standby crews. A child picks wildflowers in her backyard. A single sting sends her family racing toward emergency care. Hospital staff prepare antivenom protocols designed for snake bites rather than insect encounters. Pollination continues, but human observers maintain increasing distances from working bees. Agricultural workers wear protective equipment borrowed from hazmat teams. Honey extraction becomes a task requiring specialized medical support. A florist closes her outdoor displays when customers begin requiring ambulance transport after casual contact with flower-visiting bees. The insect's defensive responses threaten anyone approaching their food sources. Nature's most cooperative insects become territorial guardians whose protection mechanisms exceed human tolerance levels. The ground trembles beneath a parked sedan. A man looks out his kitchen window at his driveway. Legs support a body the length of a person. Mandibles longer than his forearms grip the car's front bumper. The beetle's exoskeleton gleams black in morning sunlight. Its compound eyes reflect fragments of the house. Muscles beneath chitin plates contract with mechanical precision. The car lifts off the asphalt. Metal groans under pressure. The beetle carries the vehicle toward a nearby oak tree. Suburban garages become inadequate shelters when insects treat automobiles as movable obstacles. Driveways crack under the weight of creatures whose footsteps leave permanent impressions in concrete. Property lines blur as beetles relocate anything blocking their preferred paths. A construction worker watches his excavator being dragged across a job site by a single insect. The machine's treads scrape furrows in dirt. Hydraulic systems fail against grip strength that exceeds engineering specifications. Children's playground equipment disappears overnight as beetles collect metal structures for purposes humans can't decipher. Swing sets appear balanced in tree branches. Slides rest against apartment buildings at impossible angles. A tow truck operator receives calls he can't answer. Vehicles requiring rescue hang suspended from power lines. His winch cables snap under loads distributed by insects. Their lifting capacity defies gravitational logic. Urban infrastructure becomes raw material for creatures whose strength makes human engineering seem decorative. A park bench sits empty under what should be afternoon sunshine. Shadows shift continuously overhead. Wings the size of kites flutter in coordinated formations. Monarch butterflies migrate in clouds that stretch beyond horizon lines. Their wingspans match those of eagles. Their passage creates wind currents that bend tree branches. Loose papers scatter across abandoned picnic areas. A woman shields her eyes to look upward. Orange and black patterns blur together. The temperature drops as sunlight disappears. Traffic lights become invisible beneath swarms that treat urban airways as migration corridors. Drivers pull over when windshields become inadequate protection. Impacts from creatures whose mass-dense metal hoods rattle the streets. Emergency services suspend operations during peak butterfly hours. Airports shut down runways when radar screens fill with biological contacts too numerous to track. Air traffic controllers watch helplessly as winged insects occupy altitudes designed for commercial aviation. Pilot radio chatter grows silent as aircraft divert to distant landing strips. A meteorologist struggles to provide weather forecasts. Satellite images show more insect cover than cloud cover. Temperature readings fluctuate wildly as butterfly masses create mobile shade zones. Those zones move faster than storm fronts. Solar panels produce no electricity during daylight hours. Rooftop arrays register zero output beneath wings that filter photons. Power grids adapt to schedules determined by migration patterns rather than seasonal cycles. Daylight becomes a privilege granted or denied by creatures whose beauty masks their dominance. A brick wall develops a crack that widens as something moves inside it. The building inspector backs away from the structure. Mandibles emerge between mortar joints. Ants the size of cocker spaniels work in coordinated teams to harvest building materials. Their jaws slice through wooden support beams with precision that surpasses power tools. Bricks disappear from foundations. Insects sort usable materials from architectural debris. He radios for immediate evacuation. The wall sags inward. Clicking sounds echo from inside neighboring buildings. Office complexes become quarry sites where ant colonies extract steel, concrete, and glass. They build construction projects humans can't comprehend. Loading docks fill with salvage materials sorted into piles. The organization follows patterns no architect recognizes. A homeowner discovers his fence converted into bridge components spanning a creek he never knew existed. The posts appear embedded in stream banks with engineering precision. It looks like work that required surveys his property never received. Construction companies abandon projects when work sites become harvesting grounds for insects. Their material requirements exceed human building schedules. Concrete mixers sit empty as crews refuse to compete. Creatures disassemble structures faster than contractors can erect them. A city planner watches residential neighborhoods transform into resource extraction zones. Streets disappear as ants remove pavement in geometric sections. Utility poles relocate overnight. They support purposes that serve colonization rather than communication. Human settlements become supplier warehouses for architects whose blueprints require no permits. A joystick trembles in the pilot's grip as something strikes his helicopter's windscreen. The aircraft shudders from impact. Compound eyes the size of dinner plates stare through the glass. Dragonflies with rotor-wide wingspans intercept aircraft attempting to navigate what were once insect-free altitudes. Their flight maneuvers exceed helicopter agility by margins that violate aerodynamic assumptions. Pursuit speeds clock faster than emergency response vehicles. He pulls collective pitch to climb. Wings maintain perfect formation beside him. The insect's head tracks his movements. Emergency medical flights become impossible when aerial predators treat helicopters as territorial invaders. Patient transport requires ground ambulances. They navigate roads blocked by landing strips improvised for creatures whose flight patterns ignore air traffic control. A traffic reporter abandons his morning commute broadcasts when dragonflies begin hunting his news helicopter. Their intercepts force emergency landings in locations never intended as airports. His aircraft join others grounded indefinitely in shopping mall parking lots. Military pilots discover their training inadequate for encounters with insects whose response times surpass human reflexes. Evasive maneuvers fail against creatures whose compound eyes track movement. They see through complete spheres of vision simultaneously. A forest fire spotter watches helplessly as dragonflies hunt the water-dropping aircraft needed to control blazes. The planes retreat to distant bases. Fires spread unchecked beneath skies patrolled by insects whose territorial claims include disaster response zones. Airspace becomes hunting ground where humans fly only with permission from predators who never learn to share. A rumble shakes the foundation of an apartment building in the dead of night. Residents wake to vibrations that feel like distant earthquakes. The cricket on the rooftop measures longer than the building is wide. Its song generates bass frequencies that resonate through steel and concrete. The amplitudes feel built for stadiums, not suburban neighborhoods. Windows crack from acoustic pressure waves. Car alarms trigger in sequence as sound travels through underground parking structures. A seismologist checks her instruments. The readings suggest tectonic activity. Her equipment detects rhythm instead of random tremors. Noise ordinances become meaningless when insects produce decibel levels that exceed airport regulations. Sleep becomes impossible during cricket chorus hours. Residents evacuate to distant hotels. They seek quiet zones beyond acoustic range. A construction crew discovers their jackhammers inadequate against pavement that liquefies under cricket vibrations. Concrete foundations develop stress fractures from prolonged exposure to frequencies. Solid materials start behaving like gelatin. Recording studios abandon sessions when cricket songs penetrate soundproofing designed for traffic noise. Audio equipment registers inputs that exceed maximum threshold settings. A hospital evacuates patients whose medical monitors malfunction from acoustic interference. Surgical procedures postpone until cricket songs end. Life support systems require shielding from vibrations that disrupt electronic circuits. Architecture becomes temporary in a world where insect communication operates at volumes that treat buildings as resonating chambers. A welder sparks steel bars across his living room window. Sweat drips through his safety mask onto the hardwood floor. The metal grate covers glass that shattered several times this month. His front door now feels brutally heavy after reinforcement. Deadbolts bite deep into steel-wrapped frames. The welcome mat sits behind barriers meant for vaults, not suburban hospitality. A giant wasp circles outside his fortified window. Its stinger taps against the new bars. The steel rings like a xylophone under each strike. Neighborhoods turn into hardened blocks as residents weld, bolt, and barricade against insects big enough to ignore normal locks. Hardware stores sell steel mesh in bulk. Contractors specialize in residential fortress construction. A family installs an airlock entry system between their front door and living space. Double barriers create safe zones where insects can't follow human movement. Children learn to wait in sealed chambers before entering their own homes. Home Improvement shows feature episodes on reinforced roofing built to survive heavy landings. Standard shingles collapse under footsteps that puncture materials designed for weather, not wildlife. A grandmother replaces her garden gate with steel fencing topped with razor wire. Her rose garden sits behind barriers that belong around prisons. The flowers bloom unseen by anyone brave enough to venture outside. Domestic architecture shifts from comfort toward survival in neighborhoods where beauty yields to necessity. Kevlar padding covers the exterminator's arms as he approaches a house call. His spray tank contains chemicals banned for residential use last year. The client's desperate voice echoes from behind a barricaded door. Industrial-strength pesticides fill canisters built for farm equipment, not household use. His protective suit includes a breathing apparatus borrowed from hazmat protocols. The insects demand concentrations that push past every old safety line. He loads tranquilizer darts into a modified rifle. Each cartridge carries enough sedative for large mammals. The giant beetle in the client's garage weighs more than most dogs. Professional insect hunters carry gear borrowed from big game expeditions. Nets strong enough to hold thrashing bodies that can break bones. The traps baited with attractants measured in gallons, not drops. A pest control team coordinates in tight formation when responding to wasp nest removal calls. Radio chatter guides planned approaches to hives that hold colonies in the high hundreds, sometimes more. Retreat routes thread through neighborhoods where backup support waits in reinforced trucks. Insurance companies create new liability categories for professionals whose work includes human-scale retaliation. Death benefits rise to match risks that dwarf traditional workplace hazards. A veteran exterminator retires after yet another hospital stay from giant ant mandible wounds. His replacement arrives with specialized training and body armament for high-risk work. Professional pest control becomes a vocation for specialists who walk toward arthropods that hit back. Fluorescent lights hum above rows of lettuce growing in a converted basement. The farmer checks hydroponic systems through steel-barred windows. No giant insects can reach crops protected by concrete and earth. Vertical growing towers replace traditional field agriculture as farmers retreat from surface exposure to aerial predators. LED arrays provide artificial sunlight in spaces designed for storage rather than cultivation. Root vegetables thrive where insects cannot dig. Her irrigation pumps cycle nutrient solutions through plastic tubes. The sealed environment holds perfect growing conditions. Outside, grasshopper swarms strip every green thing from neighboring farms. Commercial greenhouse operations relocate to underground facilities built like bunkers. Reinforced concrete protects delicate plants from landing impacts that would smash traditional growing structures. Climate control systems run independent of weather patterns disrupted by migration. A potato farmer converts his storm cellar into a growing facility that produces more food per square foot than his former fields. Soil-filled containers stack floor to ceiling in spaces where families once sheltered from tornadoes. Urban agriculture moves into subway tunnels and parking garages. Artificial lighting replaces sunshine blocked by giant butterfly swarms. Commuter trains share platforms with growing beds that feed metropolitan populations. A tomato grower harvests crops behind sealed doors. He watches security cameras as giant beetles probe ventilation grates. His produce reaches market without insect damage for the first time in months. Food production retreats underground, where safety matters more than sunshine in a world where crops must hide to survive. A chemist adjusts her respirator before opening the laboratory vault. The pesticide samples inside require containment protocols built for extreme hazards. Giant insects demand toxins that blur the line between pest control and catastrophe. Concentration levels climb beyond old residential standards as standard formulas prove inadequate against bodies that simply absorb more. Her protective equipment includes full-body suits and independent air supplies. Warning labels cover every surface of the storage containers. Skull and crossbone symbols repeat in multiple languages. The chemicals inside could sterilize whole blocks if released. Agricultural spray equipment adapts heavy delivery systems built for large area application. Crop dusters require pilot training borrowed from precision flying. Protective gear worn by applicators resembles equipment used in major hazmat cleanup. Industrial production facilities manufacture pesticides under tight security protocols. Access limits to authorized personnel with specialized training. The compounds require storage in facilities built for materials too dangerous for civilian proximity. A farmer loads spray equipment marked with radiation-style warning symbols, despite containing biological rather than radioactive agents. His application license demands certification processes borrowed from hazardous materials handling. Environmental protection agencies struggle with regulations that balance insect control against contamination risks that multiply with each increase. Safe application distance expand beyond property lines into neighboring counties. Pest control shifts into high-risk work, where the insect's size demands chemicals that threaten everyone. A subway platform serves afternoon tea to residents who haven't seen sunlight in a long time. The station master dims electric lights to simulate evening hours. Children play games designed for tunnels where ceiling height limits movement. Municipal transit systems expand into residential networks as surface living becomes untenable during peak insect activity. Train cars convert into mobile homes. Maintenance tunnels house families displaced from surface neighborhoods. A mother reads bedtime stories by LED lamplight. Her children ask questions about the sky they remember but rarely see. Their voices echo through concrete corridors lined with makeshift furniture. Shopping centers relocate into underground parking structures where customers browse merchandise safe from aerial predators. Escalators transport visitors between levels that serve communities rather than commerce. Office buildings extend downward into subbasements designed for extended occupation. Ventilation systems filter air through multiple stages to prevent insect infiltration. Conference rooms double as sleeping quarters during surface evacuation periods. A teacher conducts classes in a converted subway car where windows display video feeds from surface cameras. Students learn about weather patterns they experience only through electronic displays. Underground farmers supply communities that emerge only during designated safe hours when activity patterns allow brief surface access. Food distribution runs like ration lines in neighborhoods that still call it peacetime. Human civilization adapts to vertical living where depth provides safety. Surface access becomes a calculated risk. A businessman crawls through a subway tunnel beneath downtown. His briefcase scrapes against concrete as he avoids main streets. The hornet nest above his office building buzzes with territorial authority. Paper walls extend between skyscrapers in geometric patterns that follow no human architectural logic. Giant hornets construct barriers that block vehicle traffic and pedestrian movement. Their mandibles strip wood from park benches and building facades to fuel endless expansion. He peers through a storm drain grate at street level. Black and yellow bodies patrol the intersection above. Their wings generate downdrafts that scatter abandoned newspapers. Business districts become no-fly zones where hornets enforce airspace restrictions that ground helicopter traffic permanently. Office windows reflect insect patrols whose territorial circuits follow schedules more reliable than public transportation. A taxi driver abandons his vehicle when hornets claim the parking structure as nesting territory. His car joins hundreds of others beneath hives that stretch between concrete pillars. Metal rooftops serve as landing platforms for creatures whose weight dents steel. Police cordons redirect foot traffic through underground passages while surface streets accommodate only insect movement. Traffic lights blink uselessly above intersections where hornet flight patterns determine right-of-way. A delivery truck idles at the tunnel entrance. Its driver refuses surface roads where a violation draws attacks no ambulance can reach in time. Urban planning now accommodates landlords whose lease terms include permanent occupancy and zero tolerance for human tenants. Steam rises from a fresh deer carcass in the forest clearing. A praying mantis the height of a basketball player feeds methodically. Its compound eyes scan for competitors while serrated forelegs strip meat from bone. Forest ecosystems reorganize around predators that outhunt any mammalian carnivore. Deer populations collapse under pressure from insects whose speed and precision surpass wolves and bears. Game trails redirect around mantis territories marked by bone piles. The mantis pivots its triangular head toward movement in nearby brush. A bear emerges, sniffs the air, then retreats without approaching. Survival instincts recognize a superior predator. Traditional apex predators abandon hunting grounds to scavengers whose size makes confrontation inadvisable. Mountain lions retreat to higher altitudes where giant insects struggle with thinner air. Wolves pack into smaller territories that avoid insect patrol routes. A park ranger documents ecosystem changes from an observation tower reinforced against insect intrusion. His wildlife census forms now list insects first and mammals second in population hierarchy charts. Hunting seasons close indefinitely as giant insects compete with human hunters for prey that can't support multiple apex predator populations. Game wardens patrol territories where licenses become meaningless against creatures who hunt without permits. A nature photographer captures images of food webs restructured around arthropod dominance. His telephoto lens focuses on predator-prey relationships that reverse millions of years of mammalian supremacy. Forests tilt, and the old kings back away. Every streetlight in the neighborhood flickers erratically. A power company technician watches from his truck as moths the size of hang gliders circle overhead. Their wing beats generate electromagnetic interference that disrupts electrical systems. Stadium floodlights become landing strips for creatures whose attraction to illumination involves physical possession rather than simple gathering. Transformers overload from impacts that exceed design tolerances. Power grids adapt to wildlife whose feeding habits drain municipal electrical supplies. A moth crashes into the streetlight above him. Sparks shower down onto his windshield. The light dies with a metallic ping. Sports venues cancel night games when moths treat playing field lighting as territorial resources worth holding. Emergency backup generators provide minimal illumination that fails to discourage insect occupation of facilities designed for human entertainment. Airport runway lighting becomes useless when moth landings trigger automatic shutdown systems designed to prevent damage from wildlife strikes. Night flights divert to distant airports where approach lighting remains functional. A lighthouse keeper abandons his station when moths begin dismantling the beacon mechanism to relocate light sources closer to nesting areas. Ships navigate coastal waters using GPS systems that function independently of visual aids claimed by winged collectors. Traffic accidents multiply during evening hours when street lighting fails under sustained moth attention. Emergency responders carry independent lighting systems that operate until insects discover and claim those sources. Illumination becomes scarce in cities where darkness offers the only protection from creatures whose light hunger exceeds human electrical production. A city inspector's measuring tape extends into a hole that shouldn't exist in the building's main support beam. Wood shavings cover the basement floor in piles deeper than his ankles. The termite tunnel system honeycombs every wooden structure in the neighborhood. Demolition occurs naturally as giant termites process buildings into digestible components faster than construction crews can replace damaged materials. Their mandibles reduce load-bearing supports to sawdust while residents sleep above compromised foundations. He backs toward the basement stairs. The floor joists above his head sag visibly. Chewing sounds echo through hollow spaces that once held solid wood. Historical landmarks collapse overnight when termite colonies target structures containing centuries of seasoned timber. Museums evacuate artifacts before buildings housing them disappear into insect digestive systems that process hardwood like paper. Construction permits become meaningless documents when termite colonies reshape urban architecture according to nutritional rather than engineering principles. Wooden frame houses exist only until insects discover their locations. A demolition company owner files bankruptcy when termites complete building removal projects faster than heavy equipment can arrive at job sites. His wrecking ball swings through air where structures stood hours earlier. Insurance adjusters investigate claims for total losses that occur without fire, flood, or storm damage. Their forms lack checkboxes for consumed by insects despite increasing claim frequency. Wooden civilization becomes temporary in a world where termite efficiency outruns human construction rates. The church bell tower houses a wasp nest larger than the organ below. The pastor locks the chapel doors for the third Sunday this month. His congregation gathers in the fellowship hall basement instead of the sanctuary they built with their own hands. Outdoor wedding ceremonies relocate underground when wasp territories encompass traditional venues. Cemetery visits require careful planning around insect patrol schedules. Funeral services adapt to burial grounds that operate under wasp oversight. The organist plays hymns through concrete walls. No music reaches the cemetery outside. Wasps circle headstones like guards around forbidden ground. Religious festivals abandon outdoor traditions when wasp nests claim fairgrounds and park pavilions as exclusive territory. Food booths relocate to indoor venues where ventilation systems filter out pheromone trails that attract territorial insects. Memorial services for military veterans move indoors when ceremonies trigger aggressive responses from wasps defending airspace above memorial monuments. Flag presentations occur in basements rather than beneath open sky. A rabbi cancels outdoor Sabbath services when wasps nest in the synagogue's courtyard gardens. His congregation adapts ancient outdoor rituals to basement spaces designed for storage rather than worship. Pilgrimage routes close when hiking trails pass through territories claimed by wasp colonies. Their territorial boundaries respect no human religious significance. Sacred groves become inaccessible except to insects who recognize no sanctity beyond their own. Divine communion with nature requires indoor substitutes in this world. Outdoor worship becomes trespassing on property claimed by landlords who enforce eviction through violence. A construction worker bolts curved steel plates into a perfect sphere. Her pneumatic wrench echoes inside the dome that will house a small family. No straight edges exist for giant insects to grip during their territorial climbs. Residential construction abandons rectangular designs that give creatures a place to cling. Windows curve in continuous arcs without corners where wasps can anchor. Doorways seal with airlocks that block insect infiltration. She wipes sweat from her forehead with an armored glove. The metal surface reflects her distorted face. Every building material must withstand mandibles stronger than industrial cutters. Architects design structures that shed insects like rain while keeping rooms livable. Roof lines curve without angles where hornets can establish footholds. Building materials include titanium alloys once reserved for aerospace applications. A family moves into their new dumb home through an entrance tunnel. It spirals underground before emerging inside the living space. Their furniture bolts to floors designed to rotate if giant beetles attempt entry through emergency exits. City skylines transform into collections of smooth spheres and flowing curves. They reflect evolutionary pressure from creatures whose climbing ability exceeds human engineering expectations. Sharp corners become obsolete design elements in architecture that must shed rather than support. A real estate agent markets dumb properties with specifications that list insect resistance ratings alongside traditional features. Square footage matters less than spherical integrity in neighborhoods where survival shapes aesthetic preferences. Smooth walls give no grip to creatures that treat angles as handholds. The morning school bus resembles an armored carrier more than a vehicle. Armor plating covers every window except narrow viewing slits for the driver. Children board through a rear hatch built for emergencies rather than suburban neighborhoods. Public transportation evolves into sealed carriers whose primary function involves surviving insect encounters. Bus routes map through territories where giant beetle crossings demand reinforced underbody protection. Unprotected vehicles flip under the weight. A child presses her face against a small reinforced window. Outside, a giant dragonfly paces the armored bus. Its compound eyes track the vehicle's movement with predatory focus. Commuter trains install external bristles that prevent giant insects from landing on moving cars. Subway systems become the primary transportation network. Underground travel avoids aerial predators whose territorial claims include surface transit corridors. Personal vehicles require modification packages that include steel mesh windscreens and reinforced door panels. Convertibles disappear from automotive production as manufacturers focus on enclosed designs. They protect occupants from creatures whose curiosity includes vehicular investigation. A soccer mom drives her children to practice in a converted heavy-duty transport vehicle. Its mounts now hold emergency flares designed to distract rather than destroy insect pursuers. Her minivan sits abandoned in the garage, its soft top shredded by giant wasp reconnaissance. Emergency services operate fleets of armored ambulances whose response times factor insect territorial patterns into route planning. Medical care reaches patients only through corridors that giant hornets permit human passage. Transportation infrastructure serves passengers whose journey survival matters more than travel convenience. Getting there alive defines successful transit. A farmer checks his hydroponic systems through bulletproof glass. The greenhouse dome extends deep underground and rises above the fields. Giant grasshoppers circle the structure without finding entry points to destroy his crops. Agricultural production retreats into sealed environments where food grows protected from insects. Vertical farming towers operate like submarines, with independent life support systems. They exclude contamination from arthropods whose appetites consume entire harvests before maturity. He adjusts nutrient flow through sealed irrigation lines. No gaps exist where giant ants can enter to harvest his tomatoes. The crops ripen in sterile safety behind barriers that treat farming like laboratory work. Livestock operations relocate underground where cattle graze on hydroponic grass. Giant beetles patrol surface pastures that no longer support traditional ranching. Dairy cows live in climate-controlled bunkers where milk production continues without exposure to predators. Rural communities depend on food produced in facilities that resemble research stations rather than traditional farms. Grain storage requires silos designed like bank vaults, with systems that detect intrusion attempts. A baker receives flour through pneumatic delivery tubes that transport ingredients from underground mills to retail bakeries. His bread rises in ovens protected by filters that keep giant moths out. They still spiral toward the heat outside, unable to reach it. Agricultural workers operate farms designed like spacecraft, where external conditions remain hostile to human activity. Harvest schedules coordinate with insect behavior patterns rather than weather forecasts. Food security depends on isolation technology that treats the natural world as a contamination source. It requires permanent exclusion. A seamstress stitches Kevlar thread through fabric designed to stop mandibles. Her sewing machine struggles with materials borrowed from protective gear manufacturing. The dress on her workbench will protect its wearer from giant wasp stings while maintaining feminine styling. Fashion designers collaborate with contractors to create clothing that combines protection with appearance. Formal wear incorporates chainmail linings that stop insect stingers without sacrificing elegance. She tests the fabric's tear resistance against a mechanical claw. The material holds despite forces that would shred traditional textiles. Beauty and protection merge in garments that treat daily wear as constant preparation. Children's clothing includes reinforced shoulders and backs designed to withstand giant ant-mandible pressure during playground encounters. School uniforms feature impact-resistant panels that spread bite forces across wider body areas. Evening gowns shimmer with titanium thread woven through silk. They maintain textile appearance while offering protection that once belonged to armor. Wedding dresses include hidden plates that protect brides from insects attracted to ceremony locations. A businessman wears a suit tailored from spider silk harvested from controlled giant spider farms. The fabric stops stinger penetration while allowing normal movement through office environments. Dress codes demand protection disguised as professional appearance. Athletic wear combines moisture-wicking properties with puncture resistance as sports activities occur in environments where giant insects view running humans as potential prey. Running shoes include steel toe protection disguised as fashion styling. Personal protection becomes invisible necessity woven into every garment. Clothing serves as first-line defense against creatures whose attacks require more than fabric. A teacher points to anatomical diagrams of giant wasp stingers projected on the classroom wall. Her students practice identifying insect species by silhouette alone. Traditional subjects yield to knowledge that keeps children alive in territories where giant hornets patrol during recess hours. Elementary education reorganizes around survival skills that include insect behavior recognition and defensive posturing. It includes escape route memorization. Mathematics lessons calculate giant beetle lifting capacity, while reading comprehension focuses on field guides that identify dangerous species. A child raises her hand to ask about giant moth navigation patterns. The teacher adjusts the projector to display wing beat frequency charts. Science class becomes tactical training disguised as academic instruction. Physical education teaches movement techniques that avoid triggering giant insect hunting responses. Students learn to walk without vibrations that attract underground creatures. They run in patterns that confuse aerial predators. Literature classes study texts written by survivors who document successful encounters with giant arthropods. History lessons focus on pre-insect civilization, while geography maps safe corridors through territories claimed by various species. A school principal schedules classes around giant bee foraging hours when playground access requires coordination with insect activity patterns. Recess occurs underground where children play games designed for confined spaces. Art classes create camouflage patterns that help students blend with environments where visibility determines survival. Music education focuses on sounds that repel rather than attract giant insects. Their hearing spans frequencies that carry across greater distances. Educational priorities shift toward practical knowledge in schools where graduation requirements include demonstrated ability to survive. In this world, insects set the curriculum. Hexagonal towers stretch higher than the old financial district. A pilot circles the massive structures in a helicopter designed for insect territory reconnaissance. Wax walls shimmer gold in afternoon sunlight while worker bees move through corridors larger than subway tunnels. The hive complex spans blocks of the old city. Chambers hold populations that dwarf human apartment buildings. Entrance holes accommodate creatures' wingspans demand wide, open clearances. His radio crackles with updates from ground observers. The bee city grows taller each week. Construction sounds echo across neighborhoods abandoned by human residents. Traditional skyscrapers become dwarfed by organic architecture that follows geometric principles no human engineer comprehends. The bees construct without blueprints, yet their towers endure weather that topples conventional buildings. Municipal authorities monitor from safe distances as bee construction projects reshape urban skylines for hive needs. Zoning regulations fade in districts where ownership transfers to creatures who build. Property values become meaningless concepts in streets no one can enter. A structural engineer calculates load-bearing capacities for wax walls that support weights exceeding steel frame specifications. His equations fail to account for materials that strengthen through biological processes, not industrial manufacturing. Air traffic control redirects aircraft around bee cities. Territorial enforcement turns certain routes into permanent, no-fly corridors. Commercial aviation adapts to airspace claimed beyond visual range. Urban landscapes transform into architectural experiments. Function follows bee biology, and the skyline answers to the hive. The sky darkens in midday as migration begins overhead. A weather station operator watches barometric pressure readings spike beyond instrument ranges. Monarch butterflies blot out sunlight across multiple time zones. Wing beats generate pressure waves that register on seismic equipment. Their coordinated flight creates wind patterns that divert storm systems. Rain bands slide away from the corridors humans grew used to. Her instruments record a sudden temperature drop. The butterfly shadow stretches beyond the horizon. Meteorological models become useless when living clouds steer the sky. Seasonal migration routes cut across continental flight paths with precision. Aviation authorities suspend operations during movement periods that follow biological clocks, not human convenience. Airlines reschedule around travel that does not negotiate. Agricultural regions swing between drought and flooding as migrations redirect moisture-carrying air masses. Irrigation systems adjust to rainfall patterns shaped by wing positions, not familiar pressure maps. A farmer plants according to migration schedules that decide when his fields receive enough sunlight for photosynthesis. His growing seasons align with insect travel, not the calendars on his kitchen wall. Television meteorologists abandon multi-day forecasts during migration months. Satellite images show living weather systems moving by instinct, not pressure differentials. Climate becomes subject to revision by creatures whose collective movement renders prediction obsolete. A subway tunnel collapses into a cavern that didn't exist yesterday. The Transit Authority inspector peers into darkness where earthworm tunnels intersect human transportation networks. Smooth walls curve through bedrock with engineering precision that surpasses mechanical boring equipment. Underground infrastructure adapts to biological excavation. Transportation networks follow earthworm navigation, not human destination requirements. Their tunnels accommodate bodies whose diameter dwarfs traditional subway specifications. His flashlight beam disappears into passages that stretch beyond visual range. The tunnel walls glisten with moisture that maintains optimal earthworm habitat. Existing foundations crack as organic construction projects undermine human structural assumptions. Utility companies reroute power lines and water mains around earthworm highways. Routes shift with soil composition, not municipal planning requirements. Gas pipelines follow paths carved by excavation that permanently alters underground geography. Basements flood when earthworm tunnels redirect groundwater flow through residential neighborhoods. Homeowners discover their foundations pierced by passages that connect distant locations through networks no surveyor mapped. A geologist maps tunnel systems that span continents. Connections enable earthworm travel between regions once separated by geological barriers. His charts show transportation infrastructure operating outside human border definitions. Underground mining operations encounter earthworm colonies whose excavation rights preempt mineral extraction permits. The creatures process or through digestive systems that pull out valuable materials. They leave soil in configurations that serve worm community requirements. Subterranean space becomes subject to biological urban planning. Earthworm engineering creates infrastructure that human construction must accommodate. A greenhouse farmer opens ventilation panels to admit his unusual employees. Ladybugs the size of compact cars patrol his tomato crops methodically. Their mandibles click as they hunt smaller insects while avoiding damage to vegetation. Agricultural partnerships develop between human farmers and giant insects. Their appetite targets crop-damaging pests without harming desired plants. The ladybugs consume aphids and caterpillars while navigating greenhouse isles built for their turning radius. A ladybug gently brushes past him without aggression. Its spotted wing covers catch greenhouse lighting. Biological pest control operates at scales that erase pesticide routines. Farm equipment manufacturers design tractors with ladybug platforms that transport beneficial insects between fields needing pest management. Agricultural contracts include partnership clauses that specify feeding arrangements and territorial boundaries. Crop yields increase under ladybug protection that operates day and night during growing seasons. The insects keep patrol schedules that track pest activity patterns, not human work shifts. An agricultural extension agent documents farming methods that treat giant insects as livestock requiring management. His reports describe symbiotic relationships that benefit both human food production and insect territorial requirements. Pesticide manufacturing companies transition to insect nutrition specialists. They provide dietary supplements for giant ladybugs whose health determines agricultural success. Chemical programs against pests yield to biological alliance management. Farming evolves into cooperative ventures where human planning combines with insect execution. Productivity climbs past methods that once depended on industrial inputs. The city's electrical grid shuts down for the night shift change. A municipal lighting coordinator dims artificial streetlights as fireflies begin their evening patrol. Bioluminescent abdomens pulse with intensity that illuminates entire city blocks while consuming no fossil fuels. Urban lighting transitions to biological systems where giant fireflies provide street illumination. Their synchronized flashing creates navigation beacons that guide both human and insect traffic through shared airspace. The fireflies hover high above major intersections. Their light pulses in patterns that regulate traffic flow. Electrical demand drops sharply during hours when biological illumination provides superior visibility. Traffic signals become obsolete when firefly positioning indicates safe passage through intersections. Creatures with an aerial vantage point manage flow better than ground-level monitoring systems. Emergency services coordinate using light patterns that communicate faster than radio dispatches. Power companies restructure operations around reduced nighttime demand. Firefly populations provide consistent illumination that eliminates brownouts and power failures. Street crews focus on habitat preservation, not electrical repairs. An urban planner designs neighborhoods that accommodate firefly roosting requirements. Residents receive reliable biological lighting without waiting on maintenance schedules. Street layouts include perching areas that support insect comfort while keeping human routes open. Commercial districts operate extended hours under firefly illumination that outshines fluorescent and LED systems. The insects maintain territory boundaries that keep coverage consistent without gaps or overlaps. City planning incorporates biological lighting specialists. Territorial behavior becomes an illumination network that runs more reliably than wires without the environmental cost.